Ralph Miliband was one of the most important political thinkers of the 20th century. A democratic socialist, he was critical both of capitalism in Britain and of the Soviet Union. His lectures about politics, economics and Marxism would electrify the young, inspiring many of his generation. With democratic socialism again on the rise, his ideas are as relevant as they were back in the 60s and 70s. His parents were Polish Jews who had to flee the ghettos in Warsaw, moving to Belgium, where Ralph was born in 1924. When the Nazis came, the family had to flee again and went to Britain. Ralph and his father went to Britain, but his sister, being too young to walk the 100 kilometers to the port, she and the mother stayed. Thanks to the help of a non-Jewish family, they did survive the Holocaust and later moved to Britain. What this meant, though, was that for a number of years, Ralph was safe in London, but his mother and sister were in hiding in Europe. Imagine how he felt. In Britain, he joined the Royal Navy and was active in some of the most dramatic missions of the war, including in Athens, Greece, and at D-Day on the ships firing at Nazis. This Jewish guy who had fled Belgium was now firing missiles at Nazis. That must have been pretty fun. He became a professor who would teach at some of the top universities, with his lectures being something very special for his time. Of course, this was before the internet, and people would instead go to listen to his lectures for the thrill, for the experience, to learn about ideas to change the world. To use a modern term, he was an influencer, a Marxist influencer of his time. Famously, his two sons, who turned out quite a lot less left-wing than him, ran against each other to be Labour leader in 2010. The right-wing Daily Mail followed this up with a hate campaign against the deceased Ralph Miliband, calling him the enemy of Britain. There is a legend that when Ralph Miliband arrived in London, he walked to the cemetery of Karl Marx, making an oath that he'd dedicate his life to the ideals of Marx. Though it's fair to point out he did have many differences and disagreements with Marx. Doubt everything, even your favourite author. Ralph Miliband's wife said he became a Marxist as Ralph knew what happens to people who do not have wealth and power. In the 19th century, the conditions for workers in Britain were close to that of slavery. The exploitation was horrific. Exploitation by those with power, such as the factory owners, against those without power, such as the workers in the factories. But the exploited people fought back. The trade union of factory workers, the trade union of miners, of railway workers. There was the Chartist movement of the 1830s and 40s. Across the country, workers got together in these unions to protect each other and fight with each other to at least reduce the suffering they endured. And great success they did have. The Labour Party was then formed and became this party representing the working class, representing this oppressed class of families. Labour was a party of these trade unions, and Ralph Miliband respected Labour for this. In 1945, Labour won a dramatic general election and implemented incredible policies to improve the quality of life for millions. For example, the building of council housing, which really for the first time in British history ended slums and moved Britain to what we can now call a first world country.
The Labour Party's great victory shows that the country is ready for a new policy to face new world conditions.
But after that government ended in 1951, future Labour governments began to abandon socialism and abandon the working class. Labour always had politicians more interested for themselves to be part of the ruling class than to actually help the working class. The House of Lords today is still unelected. Labour had plenty of opportunities to reform it and turn it into an elected chamber, but they never did, and still don't now in 2026. Miliband joined Labour and worked to try to make the party a genuine party that fights for the workers. He spoke at Labour conference for his area of Hampstead in North London and worked with Nye Bevan and the Bevanites of the Labour left. but eventually he lost faith in the party and quit. When Tony Benn stood to be deputy leader, Miliband helped out and was a close ally of Benn. It was said the campaign by Benn did give Miliband some hope, but in general he believed Britain needed a new party of the working class that would be truly democratic and lead to a government which would democratize the parliamentary system as a whole. Most of Miliband's political activity, hence, was not inside the system, it was outside the system. For him, politics is not just about elections, but about strikes, about protests, about political education, about citizens participating directly in decision-making, and so much more. Miliband worked from below, attending protests, speaking at protests, and involved in political education. His wife said it was even common for people to come round to their home to talk about politics as part of the process of political education. In 1961, Parliamentary Socialism was published, a book about the problems in the democratic system of Britain. This was a big hit. Back then, people still read books, and students of the time loved it. In the book, he explains all the limitations, failures, corruption in the Labour Party and of parliamentary democracy. It was the 60s, above all the year 1968, where protest movements shook the world, and Miliband's books and lectures were at the centre, inspiring many of the people in the streets.
That he is more interested in results than in ringing declarations. But the British government has made ringing declarations in support of the United States, in support of the American positions and its theses and its lies and its bones.
His criticisms of the parliamentary system were that it did give citizens some power. The vote in general elections is great, it is something, but some power is not enough. Britain in reality is only partially democratic. One could say his critique of the Soviet Union was similar. The Russian Revolution was before his birth, and when it did happen, there were great hopes it would be a democratic socialist revolution. When the USSR sent troops to crush the rebellion in Hungary and Czechoslovakia, many Marxists quit the Communist Party and condemned the USSR. But Miliband never joined the Communist Party, and long before those events he was anti-Stalinist and even worked with dissidents in Czechoslovakia. He heavily opposed US imperialism too, most famously in Vietnam, while condemning the US actions in Latin America. One of his best works is about the coup in Chile from 1973. This is worth reading if you have time. A remarkable piece, as it was that coup that really started neoliberalism in the world, and the attempts by what he called capital to destroy all the gains, such as the welfare state in the UK, gains that had been won by the workers' movements. Today we see Labour losing its heartlands. Communities that once were Labour's most passionate voters are now moving to other parties, including to the right-wing Reform Party. Ralph Miliband wrote about this phenomenon decades ago. In the 1970s, he saw how many people were disappointed with the Labour government, and at the general election of 1979, they decided not to vote for the party. The propaganda was Labour needs to abandon its principles in order to win power, abandon all that crazy socialism. But Miliband noted actually it's the opposite. By abandoning your principles, you abandon the whole reason people vote for you. He did not say there are millions of British people who are Marxists, but he did say socialist policies like on the health service, policies that give people health care, these policies show to voters that the Labour Party cares for you. The policies show that the Labour Party is on your side. When in the 1970s the Harold Wilson government decided not to do any of those radical policies, or when Tony Blair, Keir Starmer basically do nothing for people, the love which communities had for Labour, that love disappears.
There is a permanent struggle throughout the historical process up to today between the people who own and control and the people who don't. That's one thing. And secondly, he says that this struggle can be resolved positively by establishing a cooperative, harmonious, socialized society.